Welcome back to the morning show here on the Raj News. Joining us now is technocrat turned politician Obadiah Mailafia. Obadiah, who is now the presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, served as a deputy governor at Nigeria's Apex Bank, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and was also an economist at the African Development Bank. Today, he will be telling us why he should be voted in as Nigeria's next president. Great to have you join us on the show. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so
Morning, Obadiah. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning. Thank you so much. Great nation, good people.
Good morning. Good to see you. Now, some time ago, you described yourself as strictly a technocrat. At what point did you change your mind and you decided to go into politics, and why?
Well, actually, I haven't changed my mind at all. I'm still a technocrat, and I don't think the two positions are mutually exclusive. A technocrat is someone who has a technical understanding of economics and public policy. A politician is someone who presents himself for elections. I'm a technocrat who also happens to be now in politics. Why am I doing this? There are just three reasons. The first one is a call of destiny. My name in the Hebrew, Old Testament, Obadiah, means servant of the Most High. I want to be your servant. I want to be the servant of the people, seriously. And my name, Mailafia, in Hausa, family name Mailafia, means the one who brings peace. So I want to be a servant leader who brings peace to the people of this country who have suffered so much violence, trauma, and disorder. I want to restore Nigeria as a great nation. Secondly, I believe I have the capability to do it. I'm a development economist. I've worked in central banking. I was an advisor to the president on policy matters, economic and policy matters. I worked for the African Development Bank. I just came back not too long ago as chief economist of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states, where I was chief of staff and I worked on issues of trade, development, and international investments. So I can bring all this experience to bear on the task of rebuilding this country. Finally, I have the character. What we need today is character. In all the places I've worked, I've left a record that is good, that is solid. I have never defrauded this country. I was in a position of high responsibility. I never defrauded this country. I never defrauded anywhere I've ever worked. I have clean hands and a strong record. This is what I want to put at the service of this nation. And our focus particularly is on the youth and on women in particular and the disabled. Trust me to lead this country as your servant and not your master. We've had too many masters, we have too many political jobbers, and they are recycling the same people. It is not good enough. The youth of this country, whose future has been mortgaged, want something better, and they deserve something better. This is what I have to offer them.
Well, you are presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, and you've also talked about creating an economic kingdom. You've also talked about the National Economic Recovery Document, 2017 to 2020.
Yes.
Now, what exactly are you proposing in specific terms? What is this economic kingdom all about?
Well, a few weeks ago, we rolled out our program. It is anchored on 3 Ps. The first one is peace. Peace with security and with justice. Without peace, nothing can be done. We're going to tackle the insurgency. We're going to confront them headlong. Their days are numbered. I'm not just an economist. I also have a background in military science, having worked for many years at the National Institute for Strategic Studies. Number 2, people. We're going to focus on people, investing in people, particularly the youth, as the wealth of our nation. We shall retool them with skills. We shall redesign the curriculum to put a heavy emphasis on STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're going to rebuild and reinvent this country as a knowledge economy. And thirdly, the third P is power. We're going to fix power. My first executive order on day 1 as president would be to order that all public buildings in this country must have a solar panel installed on them. And we are not going to import the solar panels. We shall partner with foreign investors to come in here, manufacture them here, train our people on building those solar panels, installing them, maintaining them. And we're going to fix the infrastructures. We're going to have world-class infrastructures using public works systems that generate millions of jobs for our young people. The third P, of course, is prosperity. We want to reinvent Nigeria as a world-class economy with to be about $1 trillion within the next 5 years. We can achieve it if we can propel growth, if we can balance the books, if we can, do the right things in terms of economic policy management. This is what I do best, and I'm going to mobilize international investors to come into this country. We're going to bring huge capital inflows to invest in this country. My ambition is to benchmark Nigeria against Germany. South Africa is too small. Brazil is too small. I'm benchmarking against Germany in terms of infrastructures, in terms of technology, in terms of engineering, in terms of standard of living and livelihoods. Watch this space. A new generation of leadership is coming to take over.
All right, sir. So as an economist, I'd like to hear your take on foreign borrowing. I read somewhere that you said that it is treasonable to borrow foreign loans to build railways leading to another country. We've had some candidates here who are for borrowing and some are against borrowing. I'd like to hear your take on that.
Look, I cannot sit here and say don't borrow at all. The smartest people say it is best to invest using other people's money. It makes sense. What I'm really saying is that it is foolish to borrow huge loans at commercial market rates to build railways to another man's country. It doesn't. It is a mark of insanity, in my view. Those who do those kind of things might as well pack and go and live in Niger, if that is what they want. I have nothing against Niger. I speak fluent French. I've visited the country many times. We have good relations, but it does not make sense, and I consider it very treasonable to borrow money to build a railway leading to another man's country. It is an act of treason as far as I'm concerned. We should borrow, but we must borrow only for capital expenditure and for projects with guaranteed rate of return on investments. Look, for example, we borrowed so much. One of the big loans we took was an IDA loan of about 1.2 billion at the inception of this administration for so-called rehabilitation and reconstruction in Borno. There is nothing really to show for it. The money was frittered away in grass cutters and other things like that. I am going to put a stop to this nonsense, and I'm going to negotiate very tough terms with the Chinese. We want to do business with them, but not in the manner we are doing. For example, Ethiopia borrowed huge amounts to build a railway, but they ensured that everything was built in Ethiopia. The wagons, the engines were assembled in Ethiopia. They had to train thousands of Ethiopian engineers to do it. And that makes smart sense, not the kind of thing we're doing. We're just allowing them to come in here, do what they like, and cream off the profits and leave out with huge debts. That model will not do. We must do business in a way that is smart and in a way that propels growth and long-term sustainable development. So we should borrow. For example, my greatest hero is Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He was finance minister and de facto #2 during our tragic Biafra war. The whole thing was done without Nigeria borrowing $1 from the international markets. And the whole reconstruction was done without Nigeria borrowing $1 from the international community. This is what I call leadership. This is what I call economic prudence. I stand on the shoulders of the great Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and this is the kind of leadership I will offer this country.
Well, Obadiah, we've had many presidential candidates on this program. The problem is that, you all talk about more or less the same issues. Jobs, tackling poverty, addressing unemployment, infrastructure, justice, peace, and all of that. And I don't know whether you have read some of the manifestos, particularly the proposed plan of action by President Buhari, the next level. and then the policy document by the PDP presidential candidate. What do you think of those two documents, and what is it exactly that is unique that you are likely to bring to the table?
You know, a man was riding a tiger in the Himalayan mountains until when he wanted to get off and the tiger would not allow him to do. And he said, well, now we're heading towards the next level. The next level is the next level to hell if we allow these people. This is the worst government for bigotry. And, you know, they don't deserve a second term. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the capability to lead this country. They've divided us along ethnic and religious lines. They've lost the moral credibility and the moral legitimacy to govern this country. We have what it takes to do it. Look, I make a point not really to read other people's manifestos. Not out of arrogance, but I don't want even subliminally to find myself echoing what somebody else has said. Of course, if I'm watching television and I come across somebody presenting their blueprint, you know, Alhaji Atiku did on Sunday, well, I watch it, but I am not moved by it. I've thought deeply about the problems of this country, and I have the solutions to it. Talk is cheap. And politicians like the sound of their own voice a great deal. The difference between me and them is that I have the methodology to fix this country. It's not about talk, it's really more about action. And I have put in place a strategy framework to ensure delivery. Every cabinet member, every director general, every head of an agency and department and ministry of government would have a performance contract. They've done that in Rwanda with great results. This is what I'm going to put in place, and there must be accountability and constant monitoring of all our programs to ensure effective delivery. Also, I'm sorry to say, none of them are called Obadiah Mailafia. There's only one Obadiah Mailafia, and I say in all humility, I am the servant leader that this country has been waiting for.
Well, indeed.
Now is the time. I am the leader that this country has been waiting for.
It is the first time we are hearing the divine twist to campaigns. But let me ask you from your policy. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo is the inspiration behind the rebranded ADC, of which you are the presidential candidate. But we have also seen him endorsing the People's Democratic Party candidate, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. We also know of the coalition of parties, the COP, which ADC is also under. So help us understand all of this, because we understand that the agreement is that the coalition is supposed to support the candidacy of the People's Democratic Party. So why are you vying for the same post? What exactly is going on?
Well, this is news to me when you say that our great chief and patron, Olusegun Obasanjo, has endorsed Atiku. As far as we know, Atiku went there to ask for forgiveness. For whatever sins, I wouldn't know. It's between the two of them. But we understand that Obasanjo forgave him and did so very publicly. And, you know, I think it is a good spirit to ask for apologies, and it's an even greater spirit to forgive. This is what all believers across all faiths are called upon to do. So as far as I know, and I stand on the authority of His Lordship, the Bishop of Sokoto, Matthew Hassan Kuka, he said they did not go there for endorsement, they went there for reconciliation. And as a good priest, he stood in the gap, as well as Chief Gumi, Alhaji Sheikh Gumi, and of course our daddy in the Lord, Bishop Oyedepo. This is what they went for, and this is what I understand. Well, of course, we are in the coup coalition, and political parties form all forms of memoranda of understanding between them. It is natural. In the mature democracies, this is what happens very often. It is a strategic move on our part to ensure that, you know, we pull together our energy and our power to ensure that the rule of impunity is removed from this country. This is what it is about. And in spirit, I'm in favor of it. And, you know, but it's a process. We haven't seen the end of that process yet. It is a work in progress. And, you know, we should keep doing what we're doing until in the end, you know, the membership of the coalition decide who is best placed, you know, to lead the new coalition and to lead this country into the future. You mentioned the divine twist. Well, there are divine elements in everything that we do. There are divine elements in destiny. There are divine elements even in power. And it is God that gives power. I don't wear my religion or my faith on my sleeves. But I see the truth in all religions, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and so on. And all of them, you know, acknowledge that there is a divine element in human destiny. And, you know, we work with that, and we truly learn to serve the people in righteousness and in justice. So I have nothing to be ashamed about in saying that this is a divine mandate.
Let me ask you a question about the CBN, where you were a deputy governor. What's your assessment of how the present CBN handles monetary policies and some of the controversial issues it has had to deal with? I ask this question because yesterday we had on this program Kingsley Moadu, who had also been deputy governor of the Central Bank. And he was more or less saying that this CBN, the present CBN, with the benefit of hindsight, when he assesses it, he thinks that they're just playing football with monetary policies and that they could do better. As someone who had been in that same institution, will it be one of the institutions you are worried about?
Well, I don't feel comfortable breathing down the throat of my former colleagues. I know that they're laboring under a heavy yoke. There's been massive political interference with the work of the monetary authority, and I regret that, you know, every day that autonomy is being undermined by shadowy political creatures. Some of them have no role in government, but because of their closeness to the powers that be, they can go to the CBN and demand everything. And, you know, we kept almost a dozen exchange rates at one time, you know. So if you know me and I know you, you have a different rate. If I don't know you, have a different rate. Look, this is an absurd theater. And it cannot continue. We've lost our way as far as monetary policy is concerned. Part of the problem is that from what we have understood, it is not good to leave monetary authority in the hands of commercial bankers. They are just commercial bankers with heavy investments in the commercial banking sector. And they tend to tilt policy. And this is no moral judgment. It is just games theory. In game theoretic analysis, you look at policy from the self-interest of the actors in the whole thing. And they are there to what they call self-satisfying, you know, optimization. They are there to optimize the returns, however you look at it. And this is really what is happening. They've lost their way, and you know, policy is being run in the wrong way. They've kept interest rate, the MPR, artificially high. It has become an over-bloated bureaucracy. Can you believe it? The children of emirs and chiefs, they bring letters of employment to them at home. So where is the standards? Well, people with first-class honors in economics and accounting are wandering in the streets, jobless. People who barely can read and write, but because they come from the children of big people, they are given letters. This is what I'm hearing. Yeah, I cannot say that there are allegations about that. I have no way of proving it. So the CBN is under pressure to recruit all manner of people, you know, just to satisfy political interests. So in fact, the CBN of today has lost what it takes. It is no longer a center of excellence. And we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to revamp the institution as a center of excellence. There was a time that CBN was arguably the best intellectual and knowledge center in Nigeria.
One more question.
I'm afraid it has lost that.
One more question. And this is about national security. I mean,
Yes.
security is of great concern to Nigerians generally. What will you do differently if you were president of Nigeria?
I'll tell you two things that are happening in this country. There is a global conspiracy to destroy our country. There are certain shadowy world powers, I call them international vultures, who are hovering over our country and waiting for the carcasses to grow up so that they can come and just ravage our land. They've been financing and training mercenaries on our borders, and they have found ready conspirators in local elites, some of them senators, prominent politicians, and together with global jihad. And they're using guerrilla warfare. Not only that, some of them have infiltrated the countryside and are committing rural banditry. These people are not Fulanis. Please, let's leave Fulanis out of this. We've lived with Fulanis for centuries. In my community, we've intermarried with them. They speak our languages. I suspect I even have some Fulani blood in myself. So let's leave Fulanis out of this. These are rural mercenaries, most of them from outside this country. What would I do differently? Let me tell you. I'm not just an economist. I have a background in military strategy and military science. They have met their match. I'm echoing Winston Churchill. We will fight them in the land. We will fight them in the creeks. We will fight them in the sands. We will fight them in the mountains. We will fight them in the forest, and we will defeat them. I would use sophisticated technology, including drone technology. Look at this road between Abuja and Kaduna. You can hardly travel on it without, your heart almost getting out of your chest because nobody is safe. I would use drone technology with control rooms, and we are going to tackle these guys. We will defeat them. If they are using guerrilla warfare, we will also use guerrilla warfare. We will build a territorial army. Britain has a territorial army. Switzerland has a territorial army. France has a territorial army. La Gendarmerie de la France. We are going to use such models to tackle the enemies of this country. My name, Mailafia, means a man of peace. We are going to enforce the peace. We'll mobilize our people. We'll bring Muslims and Christians together because we are brothers.
Well, this conspiracy
we have
theory,
common enemies, those who don't want peace.
This conspiracy theory that you define in terms of the threat to Nigeria's national security, will you say the same theory applies to what has been going on in the Northeast in recent times?
Of course, there are shadowy international powers behind it, and they have found ready collaborators. Look, I'm a student of classical European diplomacy. I speak fluent French. I understand German, Spanish, Italian. Look, it is not surprising. There are world powers because Nigeria is a rising world power. In 30 years' time, we shall be number 3 in terms of world population, would have overtaken America. We have the resources, we have the people of intellect, we have what it is to become a great nation. World powers are afraid of it. Of course, I will not be making this kind of noises. I don't want to be too nationalistic, but we need to apply knowledge and wisdom in dealing with the enemies of this country.
Okay, one more question.
We will avoid undue confrontation.
One more question, and we'll let you go shortly. How are you going to address the challenge of corruption? Corruption. This government says they've done a lot and they've done so much. It's one of their campaign points. But, the problem, I believe, still exists. What will you do about it?
Corruption is a cancer. 2 years ago, I gave the FRC a lecture on the topic of corruption. And at that time, I praised the government for the work they were doing so far. But I've since changed my mind. The firefighting approach does not work. And they're extremely partisan about it. Put in place strong institutions. That is the first thing. Number two, equip the office of the Auditor General of the Federation. Right now, their annual operating budget is not up to ₦1 billion naira. It is barely enough to pay salaries, and I think that is deliberate. If you raise the money to, say, 20 billion, they can station auditors in every agency and department of government at state, federal, and local government levels, and insist on keeping watch over the flow of funds. Why do you have to wait until somebody has left office as governor and no longer has immunity, and then you chase them up and down? That model is wrong. We need to control how funds flow through the expenditure framework. That is one of the most effective ways of tackling corruption. Secondly, we shall create a database of naming and shaming corrupt people. Anybody who has been convicted of massive corruption would be put in that database so that his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren will know how wicked and diabolical their father or grandfather was. That, in African culture, is a serious issue, and people would not want to do it. And of course, we need to restructure the country, because what has happened is that the political economy model of the rentier state has made sitting in a particular office and chasing petrodollars the most profitable venture instead of going into business. We should discourage that. We should decentralize the country, decentralize the structure of government and of public finance so that it will reduce the temptation to corruption. These are some of the policies I would put in place. And then finally, I would integrate the ICPC and the EFCC into one huge organization with full, not just quasi, but full judicial powers to investigate, arrest, prosecute, and imprison.
Well, thank you very much.
Some people that, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to thank you very much. Please complete that
it's a pleasure.
thought. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much, Obadiah Mailafia, for coming to the morning show.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
It's time now for a short break on the morning show.